Welcome, Ondi.
Hey,
Good to see you.
how are you?
I'm great. I see you're somewhere out in the nature world. Yes?
I am. I'm in my backyard.
Cool. And where is
Where
that?
I'm supposed to be. I'm under direct orders to be here.
What, did they put you out on R&R?
I think they put us all on R&R.
Good.
It's a
Uh,
nationwide quarantine, a worldwide quarantine.
Thank you for being on the show. We've got a bunch of really fun people already in the chat ready to go. There's probably 25 people in my chat, and I'm seeing your chat is starting to fill up with Joanne and Tate, and Mara, Sarah, Donna, and so we're going to have a good time
Great.
tonight.
That's great.
I wanted to start off with, and I wanted to let you know that every so often I'm going to look to the chat and get some questions from them, so I'm paying attention, but my eyes will wander. So I wanted to start off with the fact that you are the only person who has won the Grand Jury Award at Sundance twice. And that is a feat. That is an amazing feat. How big did your head get when that happened?
Well, first of all, I'm the first.
You're the first.
And I'm one of two.
Got you. Okay.
Yeah.
I live in the past.
So I think like 3 or 4 years later, I received a text, Ondi, or I saw on Instagram or something, Ondi is the first. And I was like, oh, I must not be the only anymore.
Gotcha.
Eugene Jarecki also shares that with me. Also won 2 grand jury prizes. But yeah, I was told I couldn't win again, and that there would be no, that would not happen. It was the 25th anniversary of Sundance. So there were 25 years, I guess, where nobody had done that. And so I didn't expect to. And when they called Best Director, I certainly, as you were, that's how you and I met, was We Live in Public. So I certainly, when I brought that to Sundance, the reaction was really incredible. And we were all just riding this wave, and we were thinking we would win something. But then they called out Best Director. They described somebody who sounded a lot like me. So I remember handing my drink to my mom and putting both feet on the ground. And getting ready to go collect the award. And then they called this other woman's name. And I was just like, whoa, there's one prize left. And I just turned around, and the whole team was sitting either next to me or behind me. And we all just like quietly held hands. And then they started to describe Josh Harris. And it was like,
wow, that's great.
Those are wild peacocks, by the way.
Oh, cool.
But it was an elating evening. I mean, it was so awesome to be able to, they play your movie while another movie, like they play your film while you're winning the award at Best of Fest. And so you have the option to go and do a Q&A afterwards. And of course we took that option. I remember going with Josh and the team to the library where it was playing, and through the snow. It was snowing, and it started snowing during the awards. Night never to forget.
People in chat are chiming in, and Turco Ono, who is a regular of the show, says, go for the hat trick. 3, hat trick.
You can't do 3 because they have disqualified me from competing. So
gotcha.
I can't compete there.
All right.
Until I guess 4 people win twice. But also they started a new category called, what is it called? Premieres for people like me.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
It was We Live in Public. It was Dig and We Live in Public were the 2 films. We Live in Public is how you and I met. I have a couple of moments in that amazing documentary. That documentary blew my mind because it was way more than the story of Josh Harris. And you did an incredible job. I mean, I lived that .com era, and I can tell you from someone being in it, you explained the whole mania of everybody, not just Josh, in that film. So for people who want to understand 90s .com mania, that's the film that defines it, in my eyes, no doubt. And let's take a couple of quick looks at a couple of images here. There's your marquee, which you've stood under many times, I'm sure. There's the
So that's the first. That poster is the first poster ever to have tweets in it.
tweet. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was like as important to us, we felt, as the quotes on top. The New York Times and Wired and Variety. Ashton Kutcher's in there. Demi Moore is in there. Trent Reznor's in there with his tweet. Yeah. So.
And accepting your award. And then there's our star.
There he is.
All of his glory.
Now, I think it might have been this shot that caused him to steal the Masters in 2000.
Really?
Yeah. I had gone to Sundance to raise money for Dig, my movie Dig. And I'd never been to Sundance before. I went out there, met my brother out there. We tronched around Park City. And when I got back, I remember the loft I was subletting looked very spacious and beautiful. And I realized in that moment, oh my gosh, all the Masters are gone.
Wow.
And I contacted Josh, and he's like, well, I didn't like the way I looked. So I think it might have been that shot. But actually, he had lost all his money and had a nervous breakdown.
Yeah.
And so I think that was the main reason he was taking the tapes at that point. He was just shutting everything down. At that point, he was shutting Pseudo down and everything. So
I always thought when I talked to Josh, he liked this shot. He thought it was absurd, but he did like it. This is another shot from
I think he doesn't like the motion picture version of it, Galinsky.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that room, man, did wonderful things went down in that room.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful room. Heaven and hell. So that was heaven. And some of the performances that took place on that table.
Incredible.
Michael Portnoy from Missy Galore.
Yep.
Really incredible.
So how did you get wind of the Josh Harris at that time, and how did you pick up the scent here?
Well, Josh contacted me. Actually, I picked up the phone one day and he said, is this Ondi Timoner? And I said, yes. And he said, are you interested in documenting cultural history? And I said, well, always, but what do you have in mind? And he said, well, I can't really tell you that. I don't really know what it is yet, but the turn of the millennium is going to mark the greatest transition in the history of mankind. The next millennium will be about man versus machine. That will be the next war. And someone's got to mark this transition, and no one is. So I asked a couple people, and they said you were the person to contact. Would you be interested? And I said, well, I am heading to New York to shoot a pilot, and I'll be there early December. I guess I could come and check it out. So I went down. I remember the day, and there were all these men out there with the scaffolding on the street. And I said, what's that? And they said, oh, this is the scaffolding to build the capsule hotel. And then I walked inside, and there was a man up on a ladder, and he was hanging cameras. And I said, what are you doing? And he said, oh, I'm putting 110 surveillance cameras through the space.
That was Leo, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Leo Fernicki's.
Yes.
And I said, do you think there's a way, if I made a movie here, I could hook into that network and use these cameras to record? And he said, I'm sure we could figure it out.
Yep.
And
wow. And so you watched 5,000 hours, over 5,000 hours of footage. Is that common, or was that the most you've ever had to look through for a film?
So we recorded 5,000 hours. I don't know that I personally saw all 5,000 hours. I doubt I did, because some of those thousands, as crazy as I'm still way up there in the ratio of I'm a big supporter of shooting a lot of footage, but we had 110 surveillance cameras, 9 of which we were recording at any given time. So the reason, and then Josh went ahead and rigged his loft with 32 motion controlled surveillance cameras and 66 microphones for WeLiveInPublic.com. And that's when he also, recorded quite a few tapes that I had to beg him for in the post process, because he was keeping them all preserved for the museum. He's probably watching this right now. He wants to have them all in a museum one day, expects that they will be there. They probably will. And so he would only let me, he was in Africa at that time, and he would only release a box at a time to me. And I was like, Josh, we are trying to make a deadline here. I need more access to these tapes. And there was a wonderful, wonderful woman I'll never forget, named Sandra Valdivieso. And she watched all of those tapes that he recorded. And then one day she walked into my office. I was cutting the film. And she said, you've got to see this. And you really should see this. And I remember putting it in the tape, and it was Josh and Tanya having a fight. And it's the scene in the movie actually is not edited. So it goes from camera to camera because they're motion controlled surveillance cameras.
Yeah.
But what's amazing about it is they are just having a fight, And then what happens is the cat goes to the kitty litter pan. You remember?
Cuts to the kitty litter.
Exactly.
Sensor camera, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Cat goes to the kitty litter pan, and it cuts to the kitty litter pan. And why I kept it was I felt in me rise this urge to see what was going on with the fight. And as a filmmaker, like, oh no, did we not capture this, you know?
Yeah, sure.
And then it switches back to the fight because they're gesticulating all over the place. And I realized this positions all of us and reminds us all as audience that we are voyeurs and of our voyeuristic instincts, which is driving everything that we live in public documents and everything that's going on now. So,
Yep.
and why it's such a prophetic film, and why he's such a prophetic man. So,
Were you always doing stories as a kid, writing stories, making movies, short things, or when did you discover, if you weren't doing this as a kid, when did you discover that this was what you wanted to do?
I was writing stories. I think that's a really great question, the way you phrased it. I wrote a kidnapping story in 6th grade that I won a competition for, and I got it printed and I signed copies and all this, called Torn Apart. And then I was going to be an author for a while, and I wrote, books, tried to write books, and like in my teenage years. And then I got into guitar. I was going to be a musician. And at one point I was going to be president of the United States. But then I was a page in the Senate, and I had to wake the senators up to vote. Not the senator that I was paging for, Senator Tom Daschle of South Dakota, but it was a regular thing that senators were napping and you had to wake them up. And I thought, I can't make changes in the system from within this system, So I decided to opt out of politics at that point. When I was 19, I was a student at Yale, and I picked up a video camera. And I remember driving across the country, and we stopped at toll booths and, convenience stores. My brother David, who I founded Interloper Films with, and who I made Dig with, and he's edited on several of my films, but he's a little too pricey for me these days. And then, and my college roommate, we were all in a car going across the country, and I was asking people what made them happy, what they feared the most, and what they thought of gays in the military. And buying a bag of chips became infinitely more interesting.
Definitely.
With the camera in my hand. And then I was like, okay, I went back to Yale and I said, if I take your class, will you let me make a film instead of write a paper? And every professor that said yes, I would take their class. So by my senior year, I made 5 documentaries. And the one that really married me to making docs and films was a film called Voices from Inside Time about women in prison that I made for a class called Transgressive Women in American Culture. And these women are like in prison. Those are wild peacocks up in the tree. These women are in prison and they are silenced, basically. They're living in this parallel universe that's funded with our taxpayer money.
Yep.
And we don't hear from them. We don't know how they're being treated, nothing. And when I would drive out of the prison with the tapes in the backseat of my car, I would think that I was freeing some part of their soul and their story. Absolutely. And that if I did it right, I could share that story and maybe I could make a difference. Maybe I could create an empathy bridge, That was it. I never stopped after that.
One of my mentors, Jamal Joseph, and I don't know if you've ever met Jamal. He's an amazing guy. Black Panther, did 9 years in prison.
Wow.
And part of the reason he went to prison was because he threatened to burn down Columbia University.
Just cause, or what was the reason?
Well, because of the investments that they were making and treatment of black people. And so gets out of prison 25 years later. He's the chairman of Columbia University's screenwriting film and program.
So they forgave him.
And he said to me, you go into places like those prisons, because I go to Rikers, and you are a witness. And so your example is perfect. You're a witness, and you've got to take back, especially when you go somewhere that lots of people don't get to go. So you are one of the greatest witnesses of our century, because you're taking information that we might not ordinarily see and bringing it.
I mean, I have found that the camera is a bridge into worlds I could never otherwise enter, into science, into labs, into secret chambers, into underground bunkers, into, rock and roll mischief, and, into cults, even into mind control, and into jungles. I mean, but I learn constantly, and I realize that we all have prejudice. We all have stereotypes in our heads. We all arrange our worlds. I guess it was Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, wasn't it? It was said like, we arrange grains of sand into piles and categories, and we say, this is that, you know, and we do that. And that traps us. And we can spend the rest of our lives meditating to try to undo all of that separation that we create, which creates our suffering. And one way that I have managed to mitigate that and actually counterbalance that in my life has been documentary filmmaking, because I get to learn constantly. And I remember when I was standing there waiting for the people to show up and join us, waiting for these families to show up at the cult treatment center. When they pulled up in BMWs and SUVs in polo shirts, I thought, oh my gosh, I didn't realize it, but I expected the Hare Krishna, you know?
Yeah.
I expected shaved heads and robes. And that's just an example of so many times that I've learned from this crazy career that I've taken on. And I also went back and did films in prison. You know, I did The Last Mile, which I know you have a poster for, that you can see on YouTube. And I did it with Wired Magazine about an incubator, a tech incubator in San Quentin prison. That's absolutely incredible. It has a less than a 1% recidivism rate of people going back into prison after they're part of this incubator. It's a really extraordinary program. And that was a powerful film to make. And then Library of Dust is another film that we made in a prison. But Robert James, my co-director, and I made this film. It's a prison where One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest was shot.
Oh,
it's actually the Oregon State Mental Hospital, I suppose. Yeah. And what you see there are the canisters of the cremated remains of patients, that were basically shelved away in life and forgotten in death. And
it's incredible.
Mary Ellen Marks did some work there, and what happened was basically no one knew that this existed since 1971, and then a senator on a routine search of the property, like a routine inspection, said, "What's in that shed?" And they were like, "Oh, just some office supplies." He's like, "Open it." They're like, "Well, we'd have to go get a key." They said, "Well, go get the key." So they open it up, and there's 2 yellowed pieces of paper on a table, and it's basically the number that you see on the can, which you can't even really make out, and the corresponding name of the person. So all of these families got reunited with their loved ones.
How many?
All of a sudden, starting in 2004, when the state senator opened the shed.
About how
and
many?
If those 2 pieces of paper had been destroyed, that was it.
How many cans were there? People?
Thousands.
Really? Wow.
Thousands upon thousands. And they had this beautiful, the copper had eroded based on like moisture and the people inside and the remains of the people. They were all different.
I'm going to jump into the chat for a second. We got to acknowledge some of the chatters. David Campbell says, "Say something. I know you're here. I love you, my friend. It's great to see you here." David Campbell.
Oh, hi, David.
Jason,
thank you for watching.
Jason Cangliosi says, "Having interviewed people on and off camera, do you feel like you get a different story or truth from individuals when they are on camera, or does the camera provide an objective truth?"
What was the beginning of the question?
Having interviewed people on and off camera, do you feel like you get a different story or truth when they are on camera?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
The camera definitely changes things. Does it make people less truthful? Not necessarily. In a lot of ways, it makes people more truthful. But that depends also on the person and the circumstances. But a camera does affect things. And so I've never been I am a verite filmmaker in a lot of ways. I love observational filmmaking, but I also will put the camera down and go help somebody out or interact. I witnessed when I was very young, I worked on one film of somebody else's, and they were novice filmmakers too. They didn't really know what they were doing. And they were just like taking fly on the wall very seriously. They would stand back and observe. And the people in the film didn't want to give them anything because they weren't giving up anything of themselves. And so I'm very much an open book. And I feel like if somebody's sharing with me, then I need to share of myself. So things become, I think that is one of the keys to great documentary filmmaking, is how authentic of a shot are you getting? And that really depends on how comfortable you're able to make your subjects. And that really came in handy with my scripted film, Mapplethorpe, with Matt Smith and the cast, with such a tight shooting schedule of 19 days in New York and 35 locations. it was all about breaking down those walls very quickly and getting down to like what is going on in the scene and nailing it. We were also shooting on film, 16mm film.
Going to jump into the chat for a second. It's getting crowded in there. They're chomping at the bit. Mark Schumann's with us. Michael Mao is with us. James Turcott has a question for you. It's a pretty important one. Before we get to it, though, Anthony Randall's here. Bill Neems, Captain Seaman, Tanya. Welcome, guys. Mike Schreibman, Jamie Meadis.
Tanya who?
Tanya who? Did you say? Tanya Ann.
Okay. Tanya Corin joined me for a We Live in Public Q&A at the Nighthawk Cinema.
Oh, cool.
Not too long ago.
Pavel Cortez.
Great Nighthawk Cinema. What?
Pavel Cortez, John Broder, Rachel Torgoff. They're all here. Judd Trichter. Turco Ono has a very important question. When you were in New Haven,
yeah,
what was your pizza? Sally's, Pepe's, Modern, Naples, other? Why? What was it about the pie you liked?
You know, I'm going to really disappoint you. Wait, I would take Pepe's any day of the week, by the way. I'll take Pepe's any day of the week. I don't know that I gave Sally's her due. But they're a little bit outside of town, you know? And I just was such a Greek salad fanatic that I loved Yorkside.
Yorkside is my
favorite. Yorkside pizza because I would eat Yorkside's Greek salad. And if anybody wanted to ingratiate themselves, because I was a double major, American Studies, concentration in film and literature, and theater studies. So I was directing theater there. And if they all, like actors who, you know, wanted to hang out after would bring me a Greek salad, that was the way to do it.
Yorkside's my favorite too. So I love theater. I'm in, as you know, and I'm now that I know that you directed theater, I'm waiting for you to say, let's do some theater. In the meantime, you started the Yale Street Theater Club. Tell us about that.
The Yale Street Theater Troupe was like a political machine. We just would decide things that we were pissed off about, and instead of like setting up a shanty, you know, to fight apartheid, we just show up outside people. Like as soon as the class let out, we would jump out. Nick Gilhool, Okwe Apokwasili, those were some of the people who, you know, are super talents to this day. Okwe, I haven't seen her in a long time. I'd love to reunite with her, but great actor. And we would just jump out there and just put on a show, guerrilla theater outside of classes and in cross campus and wherever kids were. It was a hoot. It was super fun.
John Harris is in the house. Josh's brother. He's in chat.
Hi, John.
Good to see you, John. So is Michael Swiss-K, Callie, Alicia, Jay. Good to see you. J.O. Sanders has joined us.
Hey. Alicia, cool.
Andrew Einhorn, who I know you know, the Andrew Einhorn. He says, Ondi is an amazing editor, but editing is so taxing on the brain. Does she expect her brain will be sharp until 95 years old or burned out early from all the editing?
Wow. What a question. And I think my brother's watching, and if so, he's a great editor too, and we taught ourselves and each other to edit on Avid. I remember I discovered God in the Avid when I discovered color effects and just the idea that I could take life, nonlinear editing, after being in a shuttle editing system at the public access station, because Yale had no facilities. So we were at a public access station. You would love this, Galinsky. Like literally we were jockeying for time with like the head of the Communist Party and the head of the Catholic Church.
Nice.
Or the local church. And we would just, and it was actually a minister at the church that got us a TV, you know, slot for Voices from Inside Time on PBS in the tri-state area. But I digress. Editing is, I was literally editing till 3:30 in the morning last night on a new project, and 5 in the morning the night before that, and 3:30 in the morning. So I do have a problem. I admit it. And I think that it's only with editing that I have this problem. If I'm writing a script, I can go to sleep. Any other activity, I'm ready to go and take care of myself. But editing, time evaporates, and the amount of ideas that are happening, like I have to work so to try to get them all done. And it's like I have a list, almost like your waiting room right now, your chat. Yeah. I have like 20 things that I've got to get done. And so, and just to make it better, and it can always get better. So yeah, I have an issue there. I think it's going to ultimately make my mind sharper as long as I can continue meditating and taking time, like self-care
Yeah.
which is something that I came to way late in life. It took my heart being broken actually, but it a few years back, and it's like literally a new Ondi.
Great.
So I work really hard, but I also take time to balance that out. So I think I will hopefully live that long. I don't know. I think I did take a few years off my life. Like I think I pulled like 350 all-nighters with We Live in Public. And my new movie, Coming Clean, which is about the opioid epidemic, and it's the first film about the epidemic where people in recovery and leaders on the front lines come together. And it's like the first one where you have some hope that the deadliest drug epidemic in our history, there could be a way out of it. I'm super passionate about it, and I must have pulled another 40 or 50 all-nighters this fall on that one with my intrepid team of 4. We just stayed up all night because that's when the magic happens.
Where it happens. Couple of new people have shown up. Lee Sharfstein, Joseph Windows. The great heavyweight boxer Derek Rossi is now watching this.
In the house.
Yeah.
Can we see them all? Can we do gallery view?
Can
everybody wave at each other? Isn't this like a Zoom?
No, they're all just names like in chat.
Oh, come on.
I know.
Here, wait, did you make me a co-host? Oh, no, just us.
Yeah.
If you hit gallery view, Galinsky, you can see everybody.
Well, I can. Well, we're in Zoom, but then we are broadcasting through Facebook.
Okay, I'm out of my technical depths. I'll stop trying to direct.
It's good though.
Good luck with that, right?
Yeah, right. Michael Mao, great performer, just joined us. Oku Onora, who was also there for the pseudo days, one of the original dub. Well, one of the guys who invented dub poetry in Jamaica. He's watching us.
Nice.
Yeah.
I love poetry. I write poetry, actually.
So Dave Campbell has a question. Recommendations for docs to watch that might help us think about this surreal time. Example, I've been watching Errol Morris's Wormwood.
I mean, I hate to toot our own horn here, but for everybody in the chat who knows that We Live in Public is definitely a film to check out during this time. But Dave, you've probably seen that because you know me. But if you haven't seen that, you can get it at interloperfilms.com in the store. You just purchase it there because we're having issues with, I think we're on Amazon, but don't get it there right now because some distributor that is defunct is like receiving checks for that.
I bought it. I've got the disc. I'm with that. It's in my heart.
Oh,
it's in my
need to do that. I would have given you one.
It's 10:30. That means the show is officially over unless you want to do.
Wait, I need to recommend something to
I know. So will you do a little overtime then?
I'll do. Yeah, I want to run around before it gets dark here. But yes, another 10 minutes. Let's do it.
Yep.
So wait, Dave, we got to answer Dave's question about docs.
Sure.
Let me come back to it because I need to think.
Okay, so what we do now is a game called 5 Objects. I didn't tell you about this. It's a big surprise. I pull out 5 objects one at a time, and you just give me your quick gut reaction. We get to know you a little bit better. You just don't think hard. Gut reaction, a short, tiny little story. All right, here we go.
Very theatrical, very theater of you.
Yeah, we'll see about that. All right, here's the first one. A stormtrooper.
I think of Prague in the year 2000. After We Live in Public, I went to go make a film about a dam being built in that was going to block the oldest living civilization in the world from water in West Africa. And one of the men from the village went to the WTO protests in Prague. And I was filming him with some people. I didn't know. I thought that they were the Italians. Little did I know they were the anarchists. And they just bam, like broke the ground, pulled up some cement stones. I'm walking backwards and chucked him over my head. And the next thing I know, it's war. And these stormtroopers, absolutely 6'7" to 7 feet tall, Prague riot gear laden police are chasing me like down the street. Wow. It was nuts. Yeah, people throwing Molotov cocktails, and I'm running with my camera, like having no idea what I got myself into. You've
got like that. Our guest last night was Tuin Voten. Tuin's a war photographer, so you got stories to parallel that. Here's our second object: a cutting board.
Okay, so Dave Campbell, you should watch documentaries right now, but you also should be cooking. Cooking is the thing that we are doing now. I didn't ever really, I was always a good enough cook, but I never made elaborate recipes. And that these last couple months in quarantine, that is a great thing to do. And I also started a garden.
Third object, passport.
Passport, I have one. Not used it lately.
All right.
And neither have you.
Fourth object, a drum.
I am in love with a drummer.
Oh, okay, great. And then the last object I pulled out specifically for you.
Super 8 camera. Okay, so that is my favorite camera to shoot. Not that one in particular, but congratulations on having a Super 8 camera. I have a Nizo with a Carl Zeiss lens that my brother advised me to get from like back right after college. And we shot Dig with that. We shot, the only movie really of mine that doesn't have Super 8 that I didn't shoot is We Live in Public, because it's a vision of the future. But everything nostalgic, perfectly imperfect, nature, my series JUNGLETOWN, Super 8 is just, it literally going to Obsession to see my Super 8 film developed is like Christmas every time,
okay.
Christmas morning.
Great.
Yeah.
All right, so we got a good question from Heather Prescott. Heather's awesome. Oh, and John Harris has a question too.
Okay.
So Prescott says, in the documentary you did with Russell Brand, do you feel that the story represents a common struggle for most people that are authentic but are blocked by maybe drugs and life?
That's a great question. Who said that?
Heather Prescott, who is a wonderful
Heather?
actress and musician. Yes.
I don't know you, but that's a great question. I want to know you, Heather Prescott. That movie is another whole session between us. I mean,
Is this the image?
That is one of the posters, one of the several posters of that film. Yeah, I mean, he came to me, asked me to make this movie, to help him finish a movie that he was making about happiness, and I ended up making a movie about him. And that was, I told him, look, I won't make this movie unless it's about you. And he said, well, why would that be? And I said, because you've been seeking happiness from everything outside yourself from day one, whether it's drugs or sex or fame. You have been on a quest for happiness and finally are coming to realize that you need to go within and also go big. You have to go big and start thinking about the world to be happy and other people, and not just seeking it through these things that you can acquire, drugs, sex, fame. He got all of them and came up empty. So I thought that that lesson would be applicable to most everybody, because when I read, I hadn't decided whether I would say yes to Russell Brand just yet. And he sent me all his books and things like that. And I opened Bookie Book 1, and in the first page, he says, I was born in the penitentiary of anonymity. And I was just like, wait a second, is that how people feel? Like, people just feel these days that if they're not famous, they're in prison? Like, being anonymous is like literally painful. And I think a lot of kids, and especially because of the world that we live in public predicted with Instagram and all of that, there is so much FOMO. There's so much, idealization of a false self, false imagery, false idols, that it is a real trap. So yeah, I don't think, Heather, that it's just Russell or it's just specific. I think it's specific. I think we're seeking a lot of things. That's why my film about the opioid epidemic is really looking at the pain and isolation that drives that epidemic. I mean, it is an epidemic of painkillers, and that's
There it is, right.
There it is. Yeah. So
the great poet Ron Cephas Jones just joined us, the actor poet. Keith Davis, who's got an incredible story that's going to come out to the world, and maybe you should meet him at some point.
Okay.
Spencer Tunick, a buddy of yours, has just jumped in the chat. And Leo Fernikes. All right, Leo, welcome. Michael Mouse.
Oh my God. Did he not hear our shout out to him?
Well, I hope he did. Leo, we shouted you out top of the show. We didn't want to wait. So we'll see. Michael Mao says, I have a keystone.
What?
Michael Mao says, I have a keystone.
What does that mean?
I don't know. I thought maybe he was referring to cameras. I don't know.
Okay.
All right. So.
A keystone. He probably is, and I just don't know what that is. Will he answer us now?
Yeah, now he'll answer. What is that,
Great.
Michael? So What's the next project? Oh, and actually, wait, before I do that, John Harris asked, what's going on with the movie, the scripted version of We Live in Public?
Still going. Still in development. I should see the first draft soon. I know that Jonah Hill is very passionate about it.
I,
And
uh, I heard from Josh that Jonah Hill watched it, freaked out, watched it again, watched it 3 times in a row.
I don't know that. He might have said that to Mark Maron on What the Fuck. I know he was on that podcast is when he said that I was like his favorite documentary filmmaker. And I know he referenced Dig. But I don't know that he said We Live in Public. But when I went and had lunch with him, he got up and bowed in the sushi place during lunch. It was ridiculous. And then he just went on about We Live in Public. And I mean, obviously, he's perfect for this
Yeah,
part.
he's perfect. It's great.
It's a very exciting project, and I'm thrilled that we're getting to hopefully make it happen. I've made, as you know, a scripted film, and I know what a battlefield it is to get to production. So I just keep my fingers crossed. Let's all do that.
So Josh was busting my chops, and he said, "Hey, so who's going to play you, Galinsky? Who's going to play you in the movie?" And I said, "Well, probably someone like James Marsden or something." He said, "No, too old. I think it would be better like Danny DeVito or somebody."
Ooh. I think you can do better. Not better, taller. I think you deserve a little bit more height.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well,
I have anything to say in that. I'll help.
Thank you. I want to audition as one of the freaky weirdo.
I'm sure you do.
You know,
I will definitely support people who were part of the bunker auditioning.
I want to audition.
I think that would be very important. I also think that we need to do a rehearsal process that includes some time in the tank.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Did we answer everybody's questions, though?
Yeah, we answered everybody's questions. Let me double check it and make sure.
I have to go run around the neighborhood.
Got to run around with the peacock.
My sunset.
Then let me ask you a couple final questions. One is, can you reiterate any documentaries or any binge watching you've been doing that you could?
So I had never seen Ozark, and I recommend it tonally for this time. Just a family that's displaced and sort of in a strange world, and the kids don't really go to school.
Yeah.
It feels very much like my household right now.
Have you seen any episodes of Dead to Me?
I loved it. I watched all 3 seasons back to back with my quarantine buddies, and even people who were watching it for the second time were super into it. Then I turned my mom onto it, and she watched it twice in a row.
I love it.
It just gets better. The writing's incredible. The performances are amazing. Jason Bateman's amazing. The whole cast. The kids are awesome. So Ozark is a big thrill. And my partner turned me on to Fargo recently, a throwback. But Galinsky and everyone, listen to that peacock. I get so involved with my films, like with Coming Clean. I miss things that are coming out.
Yeah.
Or, when it's award season and I'm reviewing a bunch of films to vote, I miss everything in pop culture. So I'm like a ripe candidate. Like there's films that you would just be like, Ondi, what? You haven't seen that? So I'm super enjoying Fargo as well. And what else have I done? Oh my gosh, Afterlife. I loved Afterlife, and now I'm a huge Ricky Gervais fan.
Oh, I've seen the ads.
Love that film. Love that show.
You know what else?
Segments, great show.
I got into last night was Dead to Me. Have you seen that yet?
No, it comes on after Ozark, and it seems, it's one of those things where Netflix, I wish they would start out like an Instagram feed where it's like it starts out and there's no volume, and then you click on it to hear, or in Facebook. That's polite,
Rachel Timoner just joined us.
Wait, what's The Great? Oh yeah, we're watching The Great right now on Hulu.
The Great?
Yeah, we're watching The Great. Have you heard of it?
No, I'm gonna. It's
about Catherine the Great.
Okay, cool.
And I don't know if you guys know who Catherine the Great is. When you first watch it, the Tsar of Russia. First of all, they're all speaking in English accents, and you're just like, wait, this is a story about Russia. Why are they speaking English accents? And then you Google Catherine the Great. And then you would be like, okay, I'm in. Because the Tsar is so distasteful. I was like, I don't even want to watch this guy. And then, gosh, who is it? Who's the woman who stars? She's so great. She's in that film Teen Spirit. Star of Teen Spirit, which actually was a surprisingly good film. But say hi to my sister Rachel, if she's watching.
Yes.
So I'm making a movie about my sister right now. You were asking me what I'm doing now.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm making a film about my sister. That's one of the things I'm doing.
And what is the aspect?
I harass her almost at least once a week, if not multiple times a week.
What's the point of focus?
The point of focus is it's called Rebel Rabbi, and she is the rabbi of the largest congregation in Brooklyn. But
wow.
She also has an arrest record longer than mine, if you can believe that, a lot longer. I think she's been arrested 7 times in 9 states, which she can put in the chat window if I'm wrong. And all of them are for civil disobedience and for standing up for people that need our help and need our attention.
Good.
And she is fearless she has fear, but she has courage. So she takes on these things. And she's somebody we all need to look at and to know about, and to just the way that she lives, we can all learn something. And I'm lucky enough that she's my sister. We were kind of oil and water growing up a little bit. And it's been a great opportunity to come together and make something. I think some years back, we realized around We Live in Public, she came to Sundance. And I think we realized that we were both after having people question their existence, why they're here, and really level up in their own lives and really get off the couch and participate. And we've just done that in different forums. I've always had so much respect for how she touches individuals' lives, deeply. 1,000 families right now, and then so many other people that, whether it's the Dreamers or, she's holding open an Amazon's. I landed in New York for a mix, I think this year, and she was in jail because she had held open an Amazon store and had hundreds of people come. She just puts it on the internet and had a flash mob there and got hauled away.
Her on the show
because they were providing ICE with cloud services, so she shut them down.
Can you help me get her booked on my show here?
I would love that.
I've got Reverend
I'd love to help you do that.
I've got Reverend Billy coming up next week.
She's great, and she'll do it.
Great.
I'm saying that on her behalf, but I think she's very open about, sharing.
I won't hold her to it. It's your word.
The film's going to be phenomenal. I'm so excited about it. I'm also making a film about love and connection and the science behind it. And in our ever increasingly isolated world, which we predicted with We Live in Public, I started in November, and then we became totally isolated come March. So it's been an incredible petri dish to look at through this time. Had a lot of people documenting themselves and their worlds, and we're expanding it. So really excited about that project as well.
Terrific.
And Coming Clean, I'm just finishing the mix here because the mix was canceled in New York. And literally, trying to get that sold immediately because our premiere was supposed to be today. Wait, today is the 22nd? No, tomorrow. We're premiering tomorrow at Telluride Mountain Film. We're opening the festival, which is not happening now, obviously. So time to get it to the people.
Time to get it to the people. No rush. No waiting. I love hanging with you. I so appreciate you giving us your wisdom and your insight and your stories. You're awesome. I have one last question for you.
Okay.
And that is, actually, John Harris has a question. What's the name of the sisters' movie?
Rebel Rabbi.
Okay. And the final question is, are you wearing pants? You are wearing pants. All right. I can see. Good. Got it. That's the new thing.
I think that's a valid question, though. And I think you're a brave man for asking, because there could have been any answer.
I was nervous, but I went for it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm wearing pants that match. Yeah, I'm excited that you asked me to show them off. Thank you.
Good. I'm glad.
Yeah.
Have a great night.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on, and thanks everybody for tuning in. I hope you all stay well and creative.
Thanks.
And love. One thing I'll say is that we really need to carry the lessons we're learning right now forward as we start reopening. Whatever you've been doing quietly, keep doing that as well. Keep the balance, because we were all going a little too fast before. I'm totally led that, or was much part of that. And we need to see what we can do remotely and do things like this, Galinsky, where we just connect and unite online so that we can take the burden off our world and our environment a little bit more and enjoy this planet for longer.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Ciao.